TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop, come on, baby, higher. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot. We won't stop.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors. It's that time of the week for Three Men in a Box. Matt Grissom, Quentin Mills, the NCAA Insiders. And last week was Bama, Georgia. I get it, and it was a classic. And a lot of you guys fell asleep at halftime and was already anointing Jalen Milroe, who I said, if you like Bama, you better grab that 7-1 on the Heisman. Well, at halftime, he became the favorite at plus 250. An amazing second half by the Bulldogs, come all the way back. Jalen Milroe says, hold my beer. And Mr. Williams, 17 years old, hits the spin button, goes down the sideline for 70+ for the win there. Before we break down that game, talk about the recap of the weekend, talk about Arkansas and the Vols. Get the swamp update from Quentin Mills. Shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. If you haven't downloaded the app, head on over to Google Play, download it. It's free, guys. Trust me, you'll be using that thing like you use every other app by the end of this year and into 2025. Viva Tequila Seltzer. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. CT Bets, that team and family second to none. Go try one. If they don't have it where you get your adult beverages, ask why. And of course, Atlanta Steak and Seafood. Terry Smith, head on over to Facebook, follow Terry Smith, follow Atlanta Steak and Seafood. Use the promo code CUSTOMER and get 15% off any order over $199. If you order today, you might be grilling by Sunday. So and of course, Elijah Cox, how can I forget? To one of the best, if not the best producers in the world. We can't do it without you, kid. Thank you so much for doing what you do. So without further ado, let's bring them in. Matt Grissom and Mr. Quentin Mills. What up, boys?
Hello, Jeffrey.
Another Friday with Jeff.
Hey, what a way to start the weekend right here. We saw an amazing game in Tuscaloosa. Now, we all expected that, but I don't think we expected a tale of two halves. Carson Beck in Georgia couldn't have played a worse half. It was over. It was a wrap. You were trying to find what other West Coast games you could watch and turn the channel. And then we saw the real Georgia team in the second half. But Coach DeBoer and Jalen Milroe says, not so fast, not on our home turf. They come back and win the game in dramatic fashion. Quentin, what'd you think of that game?
I think I was way off by taking the under in that game. There was zero defense played. It was 11-on-11 football, just both offensive teams. Milroe looked really good. He's got to be a Heisman front runner after that performance. Georgia, I think the way they were able to come back the second half will spark and overflow into this week. But you know what? this is a weird matchup where, like, I think you actually, if you're going for a national title, you want to be the loser of this game that they just had, because it seems like anytime the first game is won, the opposite team uses that as motivation. It ultimately wins in Atlanta or in the college football playoffs. So I think while Alabama's celebrating a win, you never celebrate a loss. I think Georgia's okay with losing this one because they know they'll come back and see him later in the year. So they'll just use it as motivation. Kirby's a great coach. He's one of the legendary guys that you put up there right now with the ranks of Saban and current college football. He's one of the last proven guys left, and there's a reason for it. So Kirby will get his team right, and I'll have a play on it this week.
And the funny is, these guys could, and again, I don't have the Rubik's Cube, the whatever we want to say here, to figure out. These guys could eventually meet up 3 times. Again, they could meet up in the SEC championship, and then again, they could meet up somewhere in the college playoffs. Obviously, Matt, your thoughts?
I think it was a great game. I think it was a testament to just how mentally strong Kirby Smart's teams are to be able to come. I mean, most teams would have given up when it was 28-0, not Georgia. They gave me a scare there. I think that was my only loss. I gave out 6 picks last week, went 5-1 with the under, the only one not cashing. Alabama, they gave me a pretty big scare there, but thank God for Ryan Williams, which I don't know if you know this. He's 17 years old. They made sure to tell us 50,000 times on the broadcast.
It was, and again, he is still 17 years old, of course. There, we talked backstage, and no one. I'm not saying to cover, okay, but Lane Kiffin does it again. This is an Ole Miss team that is. I've been watching. We got lucky on one of their team totals. One of our losses on Saturday was their team total over. Not only did they not cover the 17, 18 points or 15, whatever you've got, they lost outright. Now, this is a Kentucky team. They got lambasted at home by South Carolina, then had to play Georgia the next week and lost 13-12. So 4 field goals. So you would have thought they gave everything there, and this was the layup of all layups for Ole Miss. This is just going to take you to the woodshed and boom, boom, boom. Kiffin does what he always does, brain fire. Not only do they not cover, not only do they don't get their team total, they lost outright, and almost like Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. You look at their schedule, they could be outside looking in, Matt.
Yeah, I think their playoff hopes are done. I think Jackson Dart's Heisman hopeful season is done, and all because of that one loss. But it is the one that you can't afford to lose if you're Ole Miss. You can write off Georgia as a loss. People can live with that if you go 11-1, but you can't lose. You can't lose to Kentucky. I think they bounced back against South Carolina, but this is also another just a weird spot. I mean, what South Carolina team shows up? They played really good against LSU. Obviously, they beat Kentucky. Probably should have won the LSU game. But I don't know. I think we don't know exactly what Ole Miss is, because that was the first competent defense that they had faced. But I think, I was high on Ole Miss coming into the season. I thought that they would have a good shot at beating Georgia with that offense. Now I'm thinking it's going to be another 9-3 season for Lane.
Quentin, did we sell or did I sell? I know I did. Were we selling Kentucky short based on their start and then obviously their performance against South Carolina? Let's just say instead of the 4 field goals against Georgia, they happened to get into pay dirt and a touchdown somewhere and beat Georgia and then went to Ole Miss and did what they did. We'd be looking at this Kentucky team a whole different way.
Yeah, they'd be a ranked team at this point. Listen, Mark Stoops is a great coach. Comes from a good blood family line of college football legendary status. And there's just something about, like, when you go to Kentucky, right? Same thing with Ole Miss. They're top programs, but when you compare Florida, Georgia, Alabama money, you can only get your ceiling so high. And I think that's the problem at these schools like Ole Miss for Lane Kiffin and Mark Stoops, Kentucky. You can only be so good. It just is what it is. At the end of the day, the kids don't want to go there. The top kids, I should say. You're going to get some good kids, maybe a couple transfers, but you're not getting the Ryan Williams. You're not getting the legendary Bama players. You're not getting Carson Beck there at the helm every year in and year out. And I think part of this falls on just that stat alone. Like, you can only be so good at those schools. And I think Ole Miss is a 10-2 ceiling team. Doesn't matter if Lane Kiffin's there or Nick Saban, in my opinion. It's just people want to play for certain schools, and it just is what it is. They go where the money is. They go where the national title is. I think Kentucky's in the same boat. They're going to beat teams that they probably have no business beating from time to time, and then they're going to lose the games, that they shouldn't lose to. So you're always going to be in that 8-4 to like 10-2 range with the schools, and they just live with it. It's kind of like Oklahoma State is similar. So it's just there's a ceiling that you just can't keep going any higher.
Big Ten, Matt. Big 12, what have you seen? It's been, let me see, we're week 5 in the NFL, so it's week 6 here in college. Take us back 6 weeks ago to your pre-flop thoughts, maybe some of those tickets that you have for futures, under-overs. But as a whole, what are you seeing? Your thoughts early to where you are now sitting before kickoff on Saturday, Big 10 and Big 12. Any teams that are surprising you? Or some teams that you had a little higher hopes that just haven't fired yet?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, we'll start in the Big 12. I really liked Kansas State this year, and they're not out of the running, but I think you've got to give it up for Colorado. What they did to UCF last week to start the season 2-0 in conference play in the Big 12. You can say what you want about Dion and his outlandish shades and everything on the sidelines, but he's actually putting together a pretty good team that looks good. And then BYU, I wouldn't have picked them to be at the top of the Big 12 right now, but they look really good, sitting at 5-0, the only undefeated team in the Big 12. Over on the Big 10 side, I really like Oregon, which I'll get to that pick in a little bit, but I think the obvious one here is Indiana. Just unbelievable what Kurt Cignetti's been able to do so quickly. Sitting at 5-0, 2-0 in the Big Ten. And, hats off Brett Bielema, but now you're going to go 8-4 the rest of the way. Started off good, but Illinois is, it's Illinois.
Q?
Yeah, to echo what Matt said in the Big 12, I'll give a team he forgot about was Kansas. I think during our preview show, we had them, as long as Jalen Daniels stayed healthy, we had them at 9-3. I think their over-under was 7.5, maybe 8. They look brutal, and I don't know what happened. Obviously, they lose their offensive coordinator, but didn't think that was going to be this much of an impact. It evidently is. I mean, Daniels is a first-rate quarterback. Other than that, if the guy's not wide open, he's throwing a pick. He's fumbling. Neal, teams are kind of slowing him down, understanding that's kind of all Kansas has, and so I think Kansas was one of the teams in the Big 12 we're a little surprised by. And then the Big 10, I'll tell you, I think USC has looked more like a Big 10 team than they have a Pac-12 team, and that was a surprise to me in a positive way. I think they're going to fit in outside of the mileage. They're going to fit in really well. It seems like they've kind of already adapted. They're starting to run the ball, using that running back in multiple ways, kind of like the Big 10 does. Miller Moss kind of dropped back, passing real well. And then I think another surprise is we knew Michigan was going to have a downfall, especially offensively, but I don't think on the quarterback position anybody would have forecasted quite the falling off a cliff of Alex Orji and Davis Warren. I mean, for the University of Michigan, reigning national champions, not to be able to find a more competent quarterback is just really shocking to me, and I probably speak for a lot of people in college football because this is atrocious. And I'll tell you what, they better take up Dave Portnoy's his offer seriously because this is bad, and you can't have that in Big Blue Nation.
Well, and it's funny because I had to scratch my brain for a second. I'm like, okay, let me remember this because, of course, I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. I'm like, didn't Michigan play Washington in the national championship game? I don't see anyone talking about the revenge game this year. And again, both head coaches have gone to greener pastures. Both teams are gutted. but no one's talking about Washington and Michigan this week, which is kind of funny. The national championship game there. We've been talking since day one here of the fall shows here, NCAA Insiders football, about the U, and I had them going 11-1 pre-flop. I thought their only loss would end up opening day against the Swamp, and I said the only way this team loses is if Cristobal gets in front of them. And now in comes Virginia Tech, who was 0-2 on our board for team totals. I clearly stated I'm leaving it on the desk, but the lock of all locks was their team total over 17.5 plus 105 Friday night. They got that in the second quarter. The U should have lost. I still think they should have lost. Matt, the U, Cristobal, what the bleep happened to them on Friday night?
I don't know what that game was. That was drunk. They probably should have lost. I don't see how you could overturn the call, but also the call should have been made on the field as a catch anyways, because it was obvious that he didn't catch it, in my opinion. I don't know. Miami's in a tough spot this weekend. I really like Cal plus 10.5 here. I think what we saw last week was more so indicative that Miami, what they have is not built to last. It's flashy, but as soon as somebody figures it out and gets that game tape on Cam Ward and can bait him into making some mistakes, I think he'll do it. And we've seen Cristobal with his coaching blunders over the years too. So you add those two factors in. I think what Nick said, Justin Wilcox is
what,
like
6-0
or 5-0
something
against Mario Cristobal all time. So I don't know. I like Cal here. I think Miami is good, but not great. I think they could get upset.
Q, about that time for the Swamp Report. How's it going down in Gatorville?
That's not much to report. I mean, they do have, in my opinion, a big game against Central Florida. I think this isn't obviously a ranking big game. This is you don't even at a bad Florida team, it's still considered the favorite against little brother Central Florida. This is a cannot lose for Florida. This is a must win for UCF because, and I think Matt brought it up on a show from like a recruiting pitch. Malzahn needs this win against Florida to say, hey, we can beat the big guys in our own state. Come play with us and come make us great. Florida has to sit there and say, yeah, we can still suck and we can still handle you. There is a little optimism in Florida. I know it's not the greatest thing, but they're doing every other quarterback series with Lagway and Mertz, and it did look okay against Mississippi State. Now, granted, that was against a defense that I think all three of us would be starters on, so take that with a grain of salt, but UCF's defense isn't much better, in my opinion. Florida should be able to go up and down the field, I think, with relative ease with both quarterbacks. You saw UCF's number 2 receivers going to sit out. I haven't seen any sit-outs for Florida. They may get Trey Wilson back, but there has been some good talent. DK stepped up. Badgers stepped up in Florida. The receiving core looks good, and I think they'll be able to score points. 62, I believe, was the over-under. I think it could get there because I think both teams will be able to score on each other.
Talked backstage, Matt. Hasn't been a bigger game in my eyes in Fayetteville in a long, long time. And I talked about the perfect storm. The Vols usually roll the ball out. First one to 40 wins. This year they have a defense. They have a great quarterback with Nico. We remember a couple of weeks ago going into Norman and just laying a whoop into the Sooners. Now 13.5-point favorites. A game that you'll be at, night game. I mean, walk us through this one. This game is must-watch TV in my eyes.
I feel like I've been saying for 3 weeks that the power ratings for Arkansas were too low, and you can keep making money against the spread. Arkansas is 4-1 against the spread right now, despite their 3-2 record. Obviously, UAB was the one that they didn't cover, and that was at home, which is kind of Sam Pittman's kryptonite. He's not very good at home, except at night. He is 5-1 straight up in night games. That includes 2 upset wins over Texas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. 3, I said 2. They were all dogs in those. And then the other two were Missouri State and FIU, which you were supposed to beat them. The loss was to BYU last year. Throw that one out. This is a big game. Sam Pittman at night in Fayetteville. I've tried to look for any angle to talk myself into betting this. I just can't do it. I laid it with Tennessee minus 13.5. I took the under 60.5. I think Tennessee could name their score. Arkansas is going to struggle to put up points. So when you compare defenses, Tennessee's got the edge. When you compare offenses, Tennessee's got an even bigger edge. I just can't get there with the Hogs. It does worry me that the line has stayed pretty consistent all week. We have not seen that 14.5 that I've seen out there, despite I think it was 90% of the money coming in on Tennessee anyways. The public's probably going to keep backing the dog. They're sitting at 88% right now, according to VSiN over at DraftKings, and the line has moved to 14. So if you give me 14 and a hook with Arkansas, it's going to be tough. Like I said backstage, once the drinks are flowing, it's going to be a long day of tailgating on the hill. Great atmosphere. But my best friend's coming into town. Him and his wife are coming to the game with us. They're big Tennessee fans. So it's going to be fun regardless. We never lose a tailgate. But I think at this point, I mean, all the numbers, my power ratings make Tennessee minus 16. The website has them minus 23, I believe. So I would feel better. I'd honestly feel better betting Tennessee if they were minus like 16.5. But this 13.5 is really weird because, I mean, 48-24 is not out of the realm of a possibility for this game to end. Tennessee winning by 24. It's all dependent on if Josh Heupel wants to call off the dogs or not.
Well, I will be sitting ready for that one for sure. Before we get into the Viva 4-pack and the Atlanta Steak and Seafood 6-ounce steak, that is STEAK or STAKE. Brilliance on Mr. Matt Grissom's point there. Q, I got to ask you this. Missouri, who some people have ranked real high inside the top 10, they get, kind of just muscling through. I've seen so many boneheaded penalties on them. First road game, and they got to travel to Texas A&M as dogs as well. So sometimes getting out on the road is best for teams to bond together. But again, tough environment there. Line less than a field goal. I know it's kind of a coin toss game. I lean Missouri here. I like them on both sides of the ball. I think they're finally going to wake up. But on the other side, kind of a must win for A&M.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like this game for A&M's sake being played at noon. I like it for Missouri. I think it's a different atmosphere. Kyle Field at 8 p.m. versus Kyle Field at 11 a.m. Missouri, I think, comes out of here with a close win. This will be the toughest defense they've played. A&M's got a really good front. I just think Missouri is going to find a way to put up a little more offensively. There's a little quarterback discrepancy on who's going to actually start for A&M. I think the Reed is the better quarterback. He's obviously healthier. I just don't think that A&M's offense has enough to win this game at noon. Missouri's, again, I've said they kind of have a down offense in the sense of they don't have, Schrader from last year running the ball. It's a lot of Luther Burden, and then, hopefully Brady Cook doesn't make some dumb picks and have some penalties hurt them. But for what these two teams are, I think they're close, but I think Missouri gets it done.
Elijah, it's that time of the day for the show. And before we get Quentin Mills' Viva 4-pack, hit it. Stage is yours, Q.
All right. I like Washington money line. It's going to be an ugly game. I just think there is a slight revenge factor, even though half the team on both sides of the ball weren't even in that game last year. Michigan's quarterback woes, I think, finally catch them up this week on the road. Washington money line. Texas Tech plus 7.5. I watched a lot of that Utah-Arizona game. If Cam Rising plays, Utah wins pretty handily, in my opinion. I think they played good defensive football, but Fafita still kind of struggled. He was forcing the ball to McMillan a lot. He did get a late touchdown that kind of sealed the game, I believe, in that early fourth quarter. But offensively, they were struggling. They could only manage to get threes. I think Texas Tech will be able to go pound for pound with them offensively. Give me Texas Tech within 7 at 7.5. Arizona State money line. I like this play a lot. I just think it's going to be too much for anybody to come in from Kansas. I talked about their woes. Daniels on the road, they're already 1-4. Like, they've had a 4-game losing streak. I just think to have to then go on the road and try to break this against an Arizona State team who's pretty stymie, I think it's going to be a little too much for the Jayhawks. So give me the money line for the Arizona State Sun Devils. I followed Matt with a Georgia minus 22. And then I added Florida +3 late. Jeff, I didn't send that to you, but I really like Florida here. I think they're going to be able to squeak out a win in a high-scoring affair. And then my last play is Nebraska Pick'em, Tennessee -6.5 teaser. Matt touched on it late. I am very worried that Heupel calls the dogs off late and doesn't cover the 13.5, and they only win by 7-10 because he's saving Nico. He kind of made a premise last week that he wasn't going to, continue to run the score up against Oklahoma when he had every opportunity. I think now that you've went public on that, you have to continue that, and you almost have to keep that mentality that, hey, we can call the dogs off and still beat anybody in the country. So that scares me, which is why I have Tennessee in a teaser.
All right. Mr. Grissom, hold on 1 second. Elijah, hit it.
All right, the 6-ounce steaks. Washington money line, like Q said, this is Michigan's first road game. And what we've seen is that they're not very good. They're number 50. Washington is number 9 in defensive and offensive success rate. They both have good defenses, which kind of surprised me running the numbers with Washington, but it is what it is. Give me the Washington offense, though, to win this game. And then I went SMU plus 7.5. Golly, can't talk. I don't think Louisville is that good. And I think Parker Stone, who started as quarterback for SMU, Rhett Lashley replaced him with Kevin Jennings in that first game that they really struggled in. But Jennings has been good. He's got 7 total touchdowns through the last 4 games. Only 1 interception. He's doing it with his legs a little bit when he has to. I think Louisville played their best game last week, and I'm not buying into them being elite. Our website makes them, I think, a 1-point favorite here. So give me 7 in the hook with SMU. And then I went Tennessee minus 13.5. Talked about it earlier. I just cannot make a case for Arkansas. Texas Tech also plus 7.5. It's the late night get out game. Our website makes them a 2-point favorite. The Red Raiders, I think it is back and forth. Texas Tech, I'm going to keep betting on them until they prove me that they can't win. Arizona State money line, same with Q here. They're coming off a bye. Kenny Dillingham has done really good as the Arizona head coach. They're minus 10 on our website. So give me the pick 'em. Kansas looks really bad. And then I am on Michigan State plus 24.5. As I sit here in an Oregon shirt, Dan Lanning does not care to cover spreads. You've got Ohio State on deck next week. It's the biggest game of the year for Oregon. I don't think Michigan State is going to be able to put up a ton of points, but I also don't think Dan Lanning is going to press on the gas and try to win this game by more than 24. I was on Michigan State last week against Ohio State. They kept shooting themselves in the foot. They probably should have covered that game, but whatever. Michigan State plus 24.5. I think they could play this somewhat close. Jonathan Smith, 14-7 as a road dog. Dan Lanning 1-3 against the spread. Not going to cut it. Give me Sparty.
Before we wrap this up here, I have to ask you guys this. This is a game tonight, Syracuse, UNLV. We talked backstage how UNLV loses its quarterback, loses its running back. The whole world jumps on Fresno State, and UNLV puts up a 50-burger on them. I was so high on this team pre-flop. I really thought they had a chance, maybe to get into that conversation in that fifth conference or that fifth team there. They're playing Syracuse tonight. And 2 Fridays ago, Syracuse was at home and they absolutely laid an egg. Their quarterback was awful. Now, is it an overreaction here with UNLV -6.5? Now, Syracuse traveling, cross country, another Friday night game. UNLV's got to be reading their clippings. The quarterback, the running backs. I'm looking at team totals. The UNLV 31.5 juiced under -125. For me, that's a goal number. If you like UNLV today, take their team total over 31.5. Get that at +105. Syracuse 23.5 over -135. I mean, they got 31-23 as the final here. Before we wrap it up, thoughts on that game, Q and Matt?
I think Syracuse plays a tight game. I think if you can catch them +7, I think you take Syracuse on that spot. I like you said, they kind of laid an egg. I think this is a bounce back performance. UNLV looked good with the backup. There's a little film on him now. Like, was that just kind of an adrenaline win, or is he legit? He obviously started 3 years previously. I do think he is able to be a starter, but it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a better game and a closer game. I think Smitty said on our show, dogs are like 10-2 against the spread on Friday nights or something so far this season. So I think Syracuse is a deadly dog, in my opinion. They have quite a bite, and I think Kyle McCord, Pena, they have a good running back. I think they can make some noise out there out west.
Matt?
I don't want to step in front of this UNLV train right now. They're playing so good. I think they're 4-0 against the spread too. Kyle McCord's been good, but the pass defense success rate for Syracuse is 105th. I think Malik Williams looked really good last week. He could replicate that type of success. But I think the one thing people aren't paying enough attention to is this UNLV defense. I mean, you've got so many Power 5 guys. I know transfer Jalen Catalan, he had a beautiful pick last week. I think this defense is the real deal. They could cause a lot of havoc for Kyle McCord and the Syracuse offense. So I actually lean under a little bit, but UNLV, I think, like Q said, they probably win by a touchdown. So depending on who you like, maybe get 7 in the hook with Syracuse. If you really want it, I'd pay the extra money because I think it is tighter, but I think UNLV is priced right at -6.5, and I think they would cover that.
Well, we always end the show where you can tell everyone, obviously, where to find all your work, your website, the amazing work that you guys have been doing. Obviously, the scroll has been going. Follow Matt at Grissom on X, at NCAA Insiders, and Q at Q Millie. That's 3 L's, 2 Y's. Take it away, Q.
Yeah, just to echo, that's Q Millie on Twitter, 3 L's, 2 Y's. At NCAA Insiders as well, Instagram, Twitter, and then Matt, take it away with the rest.
Go to www.collegefootballinsiders.com. Check it out. We've got all of our projections up thanks to Parker and Nick. Parker from College Football Graphs. I'm sure you've seen him on Twitter. If not, he's a great follow. And you can click on our link to our Discord where we post all of our picks for absolutely free. Like I said, 5-1 last week on the show, 7-0 in the Average Joe contest. I'm going on VSiN tonight with Matt Humans. I'm sure, I mean, let's be real. 7-0, probably not going to replicate that success, but let's hope that it doesn't turn into a total fade this week. Regression is real, though, so tread lightly.
I was actually watching Matt last night. Why am I drawing a brain fart? The co-host, your buddy there.
Tim Murray?
Tim Murray. We've had dinner with Tim up at 8 East a few times, me and Sharapan and Mr. Murray. So a great spot when you're at the
Murray
Circa,
loves him some brisket fried rice from 8 East.
He sure does. Trust me on that. An amazing show as always. And not that you guys need to know, but we're 3 weeks and 3 days away from November 1st and the start of college basketball. So I just thought I'd throw that out to you guys as well. So great show as always. Shout out to Marty Lowe. Roll Tide Roll. Shout out to Elijah Cox. An amazing job, kid. Keep up the great work. Matt Grissom, Quentin Mills. Go follow them on the Twitter at Grissom on X, at Q Millie. That's 3 L's, 2 Y's. Everyone, 5 o'clock, myself and Ron Momorlewski will talk more college football and NFL. Till then, behave. See you soon.